Dinesh from Uttarakhand says to Premanand Maharaj, Radhe Radhe Maharajji, by now I have at least understood that I am not this body and I am not the doer. In truth, I am only the witnessing consciousness. Maharajji immediately cautions him not to fall into misunderstanding. He says that if one truly had that realization, then nothing further would remain to be known. Therefore, one should not assume that such knowledge is complete. He gives a vivid analogy. If a wrestler suddenly drops to the ground, do not assume he has been defeated. He may be using a powerful ground technique and could throw you down in a moment. Likewise, ignorance, attachment, desire, anger, greed, and ego are extremely strong opponents. One may feel that bodily identification has weakened and that one is established in witness consciousness, but that does not mean realization is complete. He says most seekers have not yet entered the real arena of spiritual testing. They are like someone who is trained at home and believes himself a champion, but has never faced a master wrestler. Even great yogis and sages have been shaken by these inner forces. Ordinary seekers must therefore remain very cautious. Maharajji appreciates the seeker's effort, saying it is admirable in this age to attempt to rise beyond bodily identity and remain in witness awareness. But one must not prematurely conclude that it has already been attained. He asks, who has had this realization? To whom has this knowledge occurred? The seeker clarifies that it is more a theoretical understanding than an actual lived state, and Maharajji responds that now the direction is correct. The earlier claim needed correction, but this honest recognition is right. The seeker then repeats, at least I understand that I am not the body and not the doer. I am only the witness. Maharajji explains that even here one must test the truth of this understanding. If the body experiences hunger, thirst, or discomfort, which belong to the life force and senses, do these still disturb you? If you truly know you are not the body, then all impulses and disturbances belong to the senses, mind, and vital forces, not to you. As the witness, you are changeless. If you are truly changeless, then you should remain beyond all dualities, beyond joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, honor and insult, gain and loss, birth and death. Only when one remains unaffected in all these conditions can it be said that bodily identity has truly fallen away. Until then, do not assume you are free of body identification. Rather, maintain the attitude that you are striving toward that state. The seeker then says, the conscious essence that is in me is in all beings. Essentially, we are one reality, though forms differ. Yet this understanding does not come into practical experience. We judge people by their behavior instead of their essence. Maharajji explains that this happens because our perception is outwardly oriented. As long as attention remains on actions and appearances, the underlying essence is not seen. When attention rests on essence, actions lose importance. He gives the example of electricity. Heaters, refrigerators, fans, and machines all operate differently, yet the underlying electricity is one. If we judge electricity by the heater, we might say it is hot. By the refrigerator, we might say it is cold. By a fan, we might say it is air. By a cutting machine, we might say it is destructive. But electricity itself is none of these qualities. They belong to the instruments through which it functions. Likewise, individuals display different behaviors, some virtuous, some cruel, but the underlying conscious essence in all is one. Maharajji even quotes the attitude of a realized vision. The cruel, the sinful, the wicked, all are in truth my Lord, meaning their actions differ, but their essential source is the same divine reality. However, he clarifies that this is not yet direct realization for the seeker. At present, it is only conceptual knowledge. When true realization dawns, the differences of action no longer dominate perception. Only the underlying reality is seen. For now, we still see actions and judge accordingly because realization has not stabilized. Therefore, Through the grace of the Guru, one should remain steadily engaged in practice. Gradually, this knowledge will mature into lived realization. Shivash Pandey asks Premanand Maharaj, "Radhe Radhe Maharaji, I have heard you many times say that if one develops the feeling that God himself is present in one's Guru, then God realization becomes very easy. How can a seeker strengthen this feeling?" Maharaji explains that such realization begins with acceptance and faith. He gives the example of the sacred Shaligram stone, which is brought from the Gandaki river and outwardly appears to be only a stone, yet devotees accept it as God. They bathe it, worship it, offer food and drink the sanctified water from it. When this faith becomes firm, "This is my Lord," then gradually the devotee begins to feel living presence. "Today you forgot to offer me water. Today you forgot to cover me with a blanket." The divine accepts the devotee's feeling and reveals his presence through that form. In the same way, to cultivate the vision that one's Guru is God is very difficult, because it means living entirely according to the Guru's will, becoming as the Guru wishes, dissolving one's own preferences and ego at the Guru's feet, becoming like a toy in the Guru's hands. This is extremely rare good fortune. Many say, "Guru, everything is yours," yet in life they still keep conditions, if, but, maybe. If one truly accepted that the Guru is God, there would be no reservation. The scriptures declare, "The Guru is Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. The Guru is the Supreme Absolute." One who truly holds this conviction needs no other practice. By Guru's grace alone, liberation comes. Meditation's root is the Guru's form. Worship's root is the Guru's feet. Mantra's root is the Guru's word. And liberation's root is the Guru's grace. If one has not seen God directly, one can meditate on the Guru. The Guru's form becomes the highest meditation, the Guru's worship the highest worship, the Guru's words the mantra, and the Guru's grace the source of liberation. One who truly lives in this feeling crosses the ocean of existence. Yet Maharaji says such devotion to the Guru is very rare. Sometimes the Guru, who is of divine nature, may behave outwardly in ordinary human ways. At such times, it becomes difficult to maintain the perception of the Guru as the Absolute. He recounts visiting a 95-year-old realized saint who appeared absorbed in God, yet asked a disciple to play film songs on a transistor radio beside him. Before entering, Maharaji warned companions not to judge, saying, "Do not look at external behavior. Bow, seeing only God." Such worldly appearing actions can shake the seeker's perception. How can this be the supreme? Yet if one removes all doubt and sees only the Guru as the Absolute and follows the Guru's word, spiritual fulfillment comes. Everyone speaks of surrender, but true surrender is rare. He illustrates with a story. After Abhimanyu's death, Arjuna wept, though he had claimed full surrender to Krishna. Krishna said, "If you have surrendered everything to me, why grieve when what was mine has returned to me?" To show true surrender, Krishna took Arjuna to King Moradhwaj. Disguised as a saint, he asked the king to feed a lion with the flesh of his own son. The king and queen, without tears and without hesitation, saw the child as belonging to God and obeyed. This is surrender. Surrender means that just as a cloth belongs wholly to its owner, whether worn, honored, or trampled, so the surrendered devotee accepts whatever the Guru does, honor or insult, attention or neglect. Such total self-offering is the 9th form of devotion. One who offers the self completely to the Guru and sees the Guru as God surely attains God. To do this, one must truly accept, "My Guru is the divine in human form." Saints have sung, "I bow to the Guru, ocean of grace, the Lord appearing in human form, whose words are like the sun, destroying the darkness of delusion." If this conviction awakens, that the Guru is the divine manifest, then faith becomes unshakable. Maharaji recounts stories of disciples whose trust was so absolute that even death could not break their faith. A disciple refused to believe his Guru had died because the Guru had promised to speak to him later. and by that faith the Guru revived to fulfill the promise. Another devotee of Hari Baba, believed to have died, rose and sang again when called to kirtan by the saint. Such stories illustrate that divine power flows according to faith and trust. Therefore, if one truly develops the feeling that the Guru is God, then one is already in the presence of the Absolute, seeing, touching, speaking, and living with the divine. Nothing more remains to be attained. Yet Maharaji concludes that to see God in one's Guru with such purity is extremely rare. Only a very blessed disciple can sustain that vision. Rahul Mittal from Bengaluru asks Premanand Maharaj, "Radhe Radhe Maharaji, I work in a large multinational company in a senior position. I constantly take tension about my work. From morning to evening, my mind keeps running only with work, and because of that, I lose control over anger and feel even more stress. In such a situation, what should I do?" Maharaji responds by first asking everyone present, "Tell me honestly, whose mind does not keep running with work?" He answers himself, "Only the one whose mind runs with Ram, with God, is free from this constant mental activity. Otherwise, everyone's mind keeps calculating, planning, worrying. Even while sitting in spiritual discourse, the mind is already thinking what will happen after 5 minutes, what comes next, what task remains. The mind never allows rest. True rest comes only when the mind is absorbed in God." He quotes the traditional teaching that as long as the mind does not rest in God, real well-being does not arise, even in dreams. But when one turns from worldly obsession and remembers the divine, peace appears. Therefore, he advises very practical discipline. Begin regular repetition of God's name. If you repeat the divine name daily with discipline, peace will gradually arise. Also, create a small daily rule of spiritual listening, even 30 or 40 minutes if possible, or at least some time each day to hear teachings of saints. He says that just as one cannot recover from illness without taking medicine, one cannot expect mental peace without spiritual practice. The divine name, he explains, is said to remove all 3 kinds of suffering: physical, mental, and circumstantial, and carries a person across the ocean of worldly stress. He then gives a concrete commitment. Take a vow today to repeat the name 5,000 times daily. Repeat Radha, Radha throughout the day whenever time allows. He adds that high corporate position, wealth, and comfort cannot give lasting peace, and all of it will eventually be left behind when life ends. None of it will accompany you. Therefore, he says, you are fortunate to be sitting in a sacred place and hearing spiritual truth. Take advantage of it now. He summarizes the practice in 2 simple disciplines. Listen to at least 10 minutes of spiritual discourse daily and repeat the divine name 5,000 times in 24 hours, whenever possible, while walking or working. He suggests using a small finger counter or bead counter worn like a ring to keep track while repeating the name silently during daily activities. If you adopt this rule sincerely and follow it, he says, you will feel the difference yourself and can report the change next time. Through steady remembrance of God and regular exposure to spiritual teachings, the restless mind gradually becomes calm, anger reduces, and inner well-being grows even while continuing worldly responsibilities. Mohit from Maharashtra asks Premanand Maharaj, Radhe Radhe Maharaji, I have heard from your holy words that when one is truly devoted, then whatever one does becomes worship. Walking becomes circumambulation, sleep becomes samadhi. Maharaji, when and how does such devotion happen? Maharaji explains that this state arises only when one's body, mind, speech, life force, and ego, everything, has been completely surrendered at the feet of God. When nothing remains that one calls one's own,
not the body, not any person, not any object, and all sense of belonging rests only in the divine, then every action of that person becomes worship. Then walking itself becomes sacred circumambulation, speaking becomes praise, eating becomes offering into the sacred fire, and lying down becomes a state like samadhi. Such a state comes when the ego has been totally surrendered, and even the vital force of life is felt as belonging to God. There is not even a moment of forgetfulness of the divine. The heart remains filled with continuous, gentle remembrance. Because of that unbroken awareness, all actions, even ordinary bodily functions like bathing, moving, or resting, become infused with divinity.
That person is understood to have surrendered all three layers of embodiment described in Indian spirituality: the gross physical body, the subtle mental vital body, and the causal seed of individuality, and to be established in the divine essence. Scripture says that one who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. Such a realized being's entire life expresses God-centeredness. Every movement of mind has taken the form of God-remembrance, and the sense of I has dissolved into God. In such a state, even sleep is no longer mere unconscious rest, but a deep absorption resembling samadhi, because the underlying awareness never breaks. This is the condition in which all of life naturally becomes devotion. Abhilasha from Hyderabad asks Premanand Maharaj, "Radhe Radhe Maharajji." In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one who sincerely spreads the teachings of the Gita and helps others understand it becomes especially dear to God and attains Him. But elsewhere, it is also said that this knowledge is very secret and should not be taught to those who lack austerity, devotion, or faith. How should we understand these two instructions together? And how do we know who is a devotee and who is not? Maharaji explains that both statements are true and complementary. The Gita should indeed be shared, but only with those who are receptive, those who have faith, devotion, or at least sincere curiosity. It should not be forced upon someone who has no respect or interest. He says that practically we can understand this by a simple rule. Speak spiritual truth when someone asks, or when you clearly see that the person trusts you and wants to listen. If someone does not want to hear, there is no benefit in speaking. It will only lead to ridicule or disrespect. He recounts an incident in which great saints once went to a household intending to speak about the Gita. The hosts respectfully seated them but said, "We hear the Gita only after someone dies. No one has died here, so please do not speak it." Despite explanation, they refused to listen. This shows how worldly misconceptions and cultural beliefs can block receptivity. Similarly, he mentions people who think a Tulsi rosary is only for widows, another example of misunderstanding. Therefore, instruction should be given only where there is faith and willingness. Even God himself spoke the Gita only after Arjuna became a true disciple. While Arjuna still spoke as an equal friend, Krishna did not teach. Only when Arjuna surrendered, bowed, and said, "I am your disciple. I take refuge in you. Please instruct me on what is truly good for me," did Krishna begin the Gita. Thus, the proper recipient of spiritual teaching is one who is either a disciple, surrendered, or sincerely seeking. Without this readiness, teaching does not bear fruit. Maharaji further laments how sacred texts are often disrespected, thrown away, sold as scrap, or printed casually and discarded, showing lack of reverence. He contrasts this with the deep honor shown to the Guru Granth Sahib in Sikh tradition, where the scripture is treated as a living guru, carried with ceremony, fanned, covered, and approached with bowed heads. He says such reverence should inspire all seekers to honor their own sacred texts, like the Gita, as the direct voice of God and supreme Guru. Therefore, the principle is clear. The Gita is meant to be shared, but only with those who have faith, devotion, or genuine desire to understand, those who listen with respect. Teaching without such receptivity is ineffective and even inappropriate. That is why the Gita both encourages sharing its wisdom and warns against giving it to the faithless. The beginning of all spiritual understanding is faith.